Good evening, everybody. I'm Maria Antonietta Sessa. I'm the coordinator of Benevento TESOL Group, and I'd like to welcome you to this session of TESOL Italy 47th Convention. Today, I have the privilege to present the speaker of this webinar. The speaker is Mrs. Mihaela Gheorghe. Mihaela is a high qualified English teacher with over 20 years experience. Since 2014, she has been covering the role of president of St. Patrick's Cultural House, and she teaches English as a second language for Cambridge IGCSE curriculum at Istituto di Istruzione Superiore Gaetano De Sanctis Upper Secondary School in Rome. The title of the seminar is The Silent Way Approach in Teaching English, an Unexpected Way of Learning. And now I leave the floor to Natasha.
To Mihaela.
Go ahead, Natasha.
So good evening, everybody. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you, and good afternoon from Rome. And I would like to thank you for attending this session. And first of all, I would like to thank TESOL for the extraordinary work on the preparation and also on the organization of this convention, and to all of you for the wonderful and helpful session that you have presented. Please let's express my gratitude to be here as a speaker and to present my experience using this new approach in teaching English. So I would like to start with this quote of Benjamin Franklin: "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." I really agree with these words because being told something is fleeting. Being taught something is memorable, but learning something is unforgettable. Richard and Rogers, in their book Approaches and Methods of Language Teaching, present a significant paradigm shift in language teaching from 1970s to 1980s, and interest in these communicative approaches to language teaching. The communicative movement wanted to change the focus away from grammar as a core component of language to a different view of language, or also of language learning of teachers and learners, and focused on language as communication and on marking the classroom as an environment for authentic communication. The silent way belongs to the tradition of teaching that favors hypothetical mode of teaching, in which the teacher and the learner work cooperatively to reach the educational desired goals. Learning is presented as a problem-solving, creative, discovering activity in which the learner is the principal actor, rather than a bench-bound listener. So Brunner said this one in his book in 1966. And Richard and Rogers in 1986 summarized this method with three features: that the learning is facilitated if the learner discovers or creates, the learner needs physical objects, and is facilitated by problem solving involving the material to be learned. The silent way is an alternative methodology of teaching language based on the idea that the teachers should be as silent as possible during a class, but the learners, so the students, should be encouraged to speak as much as possible. And Caleb Gattegno, in the early 1970s, introduced this language teaching approach that made an extensive use of silence as a teaching method. Gattegno was an outsider to language education because when in 1963 his book was published, Teaching Foreign Languages in School, because he was a mathematician, and but he strongly believed in lifelong learning. Critical of the mainstream language education at the time, he based his method on his general theories of education rather than on existing language pedagogy. And as a mathematics, he used the color charts and colored roots in the silent way. And now I'm going to show you here you can see him among his students, also among young learners, and fascinated, you know, by these tools. And in the second picture, presenting his methodology. So he used colorful charts and roots to teach and to introduce, first of all, vocabulary through colors, numbers, adjectives, and verbs, but also the syntax, so tenses, comparatives, plurals. I remember that I watched a video, so knowing more about this method, I watched a video in which so he explained, and also other teacher explained through the color of the roots, the sounds, the different sounds, and these sounds at the beginning the students can have these sounds from their own language. And I was so impressed because I saw a teacher who taught Japanese using this method, not just only English. So I would like to, for me, the pandemic was the beginning, you know, of this new approach. Because the COVID pandemic and the subsequent lockdown have changed my way of teaching, and the traditional lessons become virtual classrooms. The textbooks were replaced by chats, pictures, as you see here, share screens and gestures. So I realized that I was teaching in a silent way. So the language is, first of all, expression rather than communication, and our society is dominated by the communicative approach to language teaching. The students can produce language using simple objects and suggestions, and they can express opinions even without a book. So the language becomes a transformation of an emotion. Once I remember my microphone didn't work, so I made all the lesson in chat now, because but the student produced language, produced communication, and I was really impressed at the end of the lesson. So so in the silent way, I started to use the riaia. And last Monday, for example, at school, I brought 3 objects: an antibiotic, a tea bag, and a Post-it. And the topic of the lesson was science and technology, discoveries and inventions. And I asked my students, so what do you think about these objects? So I just showed them, even without speaking, showing this object. And they said, oh, I remember when I was a child, when I was, you know, little, the antibiotics, I hated them. Another student said, oh, my breakfast is made, okay, made breakfast with a tea, not with milk. My fridge is full of Post-it because my mother forgets things. And I asked them, what do you think about these objects? Are they discoveries, just writing on the board, discoveries or inventions? And so they brought, you know, up this initial information. And then I asked together in groups to work and to use, I allowed them to use for 10 minutes the phones. And I told them, try to get as much information as you can. After 10 minutes, they presented the class. So I was like a spectator, not a teacher, no? They made the lesson. So I asked them, please show and explain the class the information that you have get. And then the mates, what did they do? They add also other information, and sometimes they correct it. So for this fact, I was really amazed, because I didn't do anything, but it said she didn't use, for example, the plural or the past. And as you see, there is another object, and we have it also, I have it here for you. So I have a pumpkin now. And once I made a lesson, I put the pumpkin on the table without saying anything. So I started the lesson with this. They entered and they saw, oh, what's this? And it was Halloween. Ah, so it's a teacher, we are ready for the Halloween. And I asked them, gesture, what's this? What we can do with this? And they started to produce language. So origins, uses, and maybe, for example, traditions, and also the fact that the pumpkin, it's used for also, for example, for it's good for the nutrition, no? And so I told them, okay, let's complete. And I showed them that that object, so that information that they have got, they could put it in a visual organizer. And I asked them to complete the mind map with this information. And this was the homework for the next lesson, the speaking. So using this mind map with the information that they had from the previous lesson, and to prepare a speaking. It was really, really amazing and interesting. So now I would like to show you a video. This is one of my first lessons during the, after the pandemic, in a class of, these are primary students, and where we are using here the silent way teaching.
Hello, teacher.
Close the book. Okay.
Okay.
What is this, teacher? Candy?
Sweets.
Bread?
Cow.
Whale?
Turtle.
Yellow?
Green.
Black? The cow is in the triangle.
And the sheep is in triangle.
In the triangle, there are farm animals.
And in the square there are a desert animals.
Teacher, you didn't speak today.
The lesson was different, but we spoke a lot.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
So as you have seen, the teacher talking time is reduced and the student talking time is increased. Being silent means that the focus moves from the teacher to the students, and they are focused on the discovery on the language, on the quality rather than on the quantity. And they are not focused on mistakes, but on the language production. The lesson is more interesting because there is more interaction, independency, and fluency. They have more fun, there is more stimulation, and also the vocabulary development. They have the opportunity to express feelings because, as you have seen, the boy before, he was like, oh, angry, he didn't guess, you know, what was inside. and there is a more enjoyable learning is created. There are 3 basic principles. So the learner needs to discover and create rather than to remember or repeat what is to be learned, is easier using a physical object, and is easier by problem solving using a target language. And the silent way learners acquire inner criteria, and the successful learning involves commitment on the self to language acquisition. So the learners are independent, they get more autonomy, and they are more responsible, no? Because they know that they have a free will to choose. They choose the animals, and they become good problem solvers in language. I want to focus a little bit on the teacher, because the teacher needs to create an environment where the students can interact without fear, stimulates peer correction to improve cooperative manner, encourages students in a supportive but not in a competitive spirit, and it is free to observe and monitor the class. What I made on Monday at school, now I was like a spectator, and I also assessed and I watched them. About the evaluation in the silent way is carried out primarily by the observation. The teacher may never give a formal test. Oh, okay, of course, we can't do all the lessons in this way, but a part of our lessons, but constantly assess students by observing their actions. So this allows to respond straight away to any problems the students may have. The teacher also gains feedback, observing the students' errors, which are seen as natural as necessary for the learning, and can be used as a useful guide as to what the structure need more practice. So, and therefore I appreciate it so much, the session of our colleague from Turkey this morning. She spoke about this topic. The delayed error corrections at the end of the lesson is a fundamental part, because the students receive collective feedback from the teacher, which produces a positive outcome. So I don't say you made this, so a general feedback. When evaluating the students, the teacher expects them to learn at different rates, and the students are not penalized for learning more slowly than their classmates. This is, for example, I use this one for the student with the special needs. The teacher looks for a steady progress in the language, not to the perfection. How we deal with the mistakes? The teacher redirects and corrects when necessary, but grants students a bigger autonomy and fosters the development of independent problem-solving skills, facilitates self-reflection and provides verbal and not verbal feedback, and can remain silent when the students make a mistake, okay, to give them time as to self-correct, and can also help them with the pronunciation, for example, by mouthing words without vocalizing, or also, for example, as you have seen, using certain hand gesture. So the silence is a tool. The teacher is silent, but very active, okay? However, setting up situation to force awareness, listen attentionally to student speech, and silently working with them on their production through the use of non-verbal gesture and the tools available. There are advantages, okay, because the interaction of the student, not only with a teacher, but also with other, is important. It's important also to improve cooperative manner and peer correction. And the errors are corrected by students themselves and become feedback for the teacher. About the problem solving, the learning through a problem solving looks attractive, especially because it brings up creativity, discovery, and long-term memory. The teacher, so like, let's call it the undirected role of the teacher, highlights the importance and the centrality of the learner, who is responsible in figuring out and testing the hypothesis about how language works, and teaching is subordinated to learning. And this is my last slide. I would like to finish my presentation with the quote of Mark Van Doren: "The art of teaching is the art of assisting discovery." So I would like to tell you that I really feel mine these words, because I love teaching and I adore staying in class among the students. And I feel this quote like a mission, because I consider myself a guide who leads the students to discover and to explore the beauty of the language. So I would like to thank you all, and also to thank Maria Antonietta for. And now, if you, so I finished.
Kind of okay, but I hope there will be questions about the silent way, because it's a very, very unusual methodology. I mean, I think most of us have learned, have read about it, but in Italy it's not very popular, maybe because we are talkative people, we are very chatty people. So it's very difficult for us to keep silent. Anyway, I can see that the silent way has a point, because when the teacher speaks too much, the student is not pushed towards speaking.
Yes.
I mean, we must be models, language models to the students. But at the same time, we must not intimidate our students by talking too much and
Yes,
and being always the speakers, the talkers. Okay, so I agree with you. The only doubt that I have is about the use of the rods, the Gattegno's rods. They have a very difficult a name which I can never remember.
Cuissards, yes, me too. I was at the beginning, you know.
Yes, in fact, it's very difficult to teach to beginners with those roles. I studied it, but I got very confused.
No, it's you know, I have watched several different videos, and because, you know, realizing what I was doing now, I was more conscious about this you know, this method. And you said before that a teacher speaks. Indeed, the time that a teacher should have in class is 20% of the lesson and 80% the students. So little by little, okay, it's difficult, but having this in my mind, you know, at the beginning of the lesson, I said, okay, I have 20% of the lesson time and they have 80%, because it's their lesson, it's not my lesson.
Yes, you are right. You're right. If we don't restrain, if we don't stop talking all the time, the students will never have a chance of speaking and become independent. Right? Anyway.
Yes, I see here.
Anyway, Julia. I think there is a problem with very large classes in Italy. You know, the famous, the infamous classes.
Yes, but for example, my classes in association are small classes, but at school I have classes with 25, 27 or 29 students. And I can tell you that, for example, bringing at school the objects that I explained you before, the antibiotics, the Post-it, and for example, the tea bag. At the beginning, they were like, "What are you doing?" You know, and said, "Okay, this is our lesson today." They were like amazed, because it's a deep. I think that involving them in things and more, they discover more the language. So they don't see the language just like a duty, homework, mark. No, it's not, we go, no, assessment. No, it's different. For example, I was also thinking once to give them a writing test, just showing a realia. I would like to see what is happening.
Yes, but with English teachers are strange people, you know, we are different from other teachers. I think. I remember in my first year of teaching, I organized a tea party, and it was a big scandal in my school. They thought I was getting crazy. So
If you have any questions or you want to say something, so
okay,
yes, the roots in teaching maths to young children. Yes, so for example, you can use also for the comparison, the colors, now the superlatives and the comparison. So starting with this in maths, they are using it. So I remember my children in primary school. So it's in an object that they have. So, and that's why, for example, introducing realia, now in my classes, I introduce things that they are used to, they like, because if they like it, the lesson is more enjoyable.
Okay, Giulia Severini is saying something very interesting. Using objects can become a sort of brainstorming of vocabulary. They know, even unconscious.
Yes, you are really right, Giulia. They produce vocabulary, because there is also another point. They are not afraid of speaking. They are not afraid of doing mistakes. So I let them speak. It's also, for example, I discovered this in summer courses abroad. The students speak without being afraid of anything.
Yes, it depends very much on the teacher's attitude. Because I think that our fault is, I think it's a sort of professional habit to correct people. I do that even with my friends, and they say, you're a teacher, I can see that. Okay, so just imagine we do that with friends, just out of a habit. But we always do that with our students, and no matter how many times they told us that we mustn't correct all the time, they still correct them. We still correct them, and it's a bad habit.
So about the correction, as I told you, what I'm doing, I take note. So for example, if there are 2 or 3 students, like in the private lessons, I'm writing on the board during, while they are speaking, I'm writing down ideas or the mistakes, and then we have a feedback at the end of the lesson. But in class, I take note on a piece of paper, and at the end of the lesson, I made like, a general feedback.
Yes, it's a good idea to give the feedback or correction of mistakes, whatever we call it, at the end of the lesson, so that we don't interrupt the flow of speech. Okay, so is there anybody else who wants to write a comment or to ask a question? Okay, so we can close now, and so on behalf of TESOL Italy, I would like to thank Natasha for her seminar, which has dealt with a very unusual topic, I think, and all the participants for taking part in this session. And I remind everybody that at 7, there will be the closing time and the raffle. And as usual, I also remind everybody that the certificates of attendance will be available to download from the website at the end of the convention. So thank you very much.
Thank you again. Thank you all for your attention. And a great thank to Maria Antonietta for the moderation. And again, a big thank to TESOL for the organization of this extraordinary convention.
Yes, they have done very hard work.
I know, and for me, it's a big family, and it's a precious family.
For me too. Okay, see you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, see
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
You said that the road to happiness was long and winding. You said that the forest would get dark, and that the ground could shift here upon this hill we're climbing. No matter how close we get, we're still so far. But I trust we'll find the clearing. I'm trusting the trail. No matter what we're feeling, there's one way we can't fail. Let's just keep hiking. Let's plant our feet. Let's just keep hiking. Keep hiking with me. Hold my hand, baby. Keep hiking with me. You said the road up to success was an impossible test unless we had some sort of map. And I could feel it in my chest just as our feet begged us to rest. I think this just might be the end of that. But I said I trust we'll find the clearing. I'm trusting the trail. No matter what we're feeling, there's one way we can't fail. Let's just keep hiking. Let's plant our feet. Let's just keep hiking. Keep hiking with me. Hold my hand.